Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Ashley Martella, and we're pleased to be joined by Oklahoma Senator Jim Inhofe. He's on the Armed Services Committee and the ranking member on the Committee on Environment and Public Works. This time we have a face to go with a voice, and we sincerely say welcome back to Newsmax, Senator.
Well, nice to be back with you, Ashley.
Okay, let's begin with an environmental issue, and a huge one. Well, we have Obama and his liberal colleagues waiting in the wings with that so-called cap-and-trade restriction, ostensibly to fight greenhouse gases, so-called global warming and the like. Now we see an aggressive environmental protection agency dangling what it calls an endangerment finding, which many believe to be leverage to force cap and trade. Where do you see this all headed, Senator?
Well, a lot of our viewers would not be aware that about 7 years ago, I was all alone on this issue. And actually, that was back when they decided how much it was going to cost us if we had complied with the Kyoto Treaty. So it goes all the way back to the Kyoto Treaty. And the amount that it would cost us, the range was between $300 and $330 billion a year as a tax. Now, if you fast forward to the current time, we have defeated every effort on the floor of the Senate for them to have a mandatory cap and trade or a greenhouse gas emission tax. And now what they're trying to do, Ashley, is Obama's trying to do in the White House what they've been unable to do through the legislative process. In fact, they only have 39 votes and they need 60 votes in the United States Senate. So they're talking about an endangerment hearing, and they're in the comment period now. And if they're successful in doing it, this would open the door to lawsuits all over America. They could say if I'm cooking on my patio in Tulsa, Oklahoma, it could eventually get to the polar bear and all these silly things that are there. So they're going to really attempt to do this, and we just have to keep telling everyone they can't do it legislatively, so they're trying to do everything from the White House. We can't let it happen. This thing would be close to $400 billion a year as a tax increase.
Well, some of your Republican colleagues note the cap and trade amounts to an energy usage tax that will add, they say, at least $3,000 a year to everybody's energy bill. What do you predict will be the net result if it is rammed through Congress?
Well, yeah, the $3,000 comes as a fairly accurate figure. It depends on what part of the country you're from. It's greater in the central part of the country than it is on both coasts. It would be huge, and what it would amount to is something that would have no effect on reducing CO2. First of all, their assumption is that science all agrees that CO2 or anthropogenic gases cause global warming. Everyone thought that was true about 7 years ago, but over the last 7 years, we've found that many hundreds of scientists have said, well, it really isn't true. Now, if people want to see this, we have a website. It's inhofe.senate.gov, and they can look that up, and you can see the names of over 700 scientists who used to believe that CO2 caused global warming and now don't believe it. Now, for those people out there, Ashley, who still believe that CO2, anthropogenic gases, methane are causing global warming, if you really still believe that, then ask yourself the question, what good does it do for us in the United States to unilaterally restrict and tax emissions, and that's what they're talking about, if other countries don't do it? It's estimated by the Heritage Foundation that if they are successful in their endangerment findings in the White House, that it will cost 800,000 jobs almost immediately. So this is something we can't let happen. Those jobs, where would they go? They'd go to China, India, Mexico. They'd go to places where they don't have any emission restrictions. Consequently, it would have a net increase worldwide in CO2. So it just doesn't make any sense. But when you're dealing with the Hollywood elitists, extremists, environmentalists, you don't have to make sense.
All right, assuming Republican senators, that's a big assumption, can keep Specter, Collins, and Snowe on the reservation this time, can you mount an effective filibuster against cap and trade?
Oh yeah, no, we can do it. No, we can beat it. But what we can't beat is if they want to do it unilaterally through the Clean Air Act, through regulations. That doesn't take legislation. What we want to do is not be intimidated into going ahead and saying, well, we could pass something less onerous than having it regulated from the White House under the Clean Air Act. I won't do that. I won't play that game with them. I want them to assume full responsibility. So when the people of America find it's costing every taxpayer paying family some $3,000 a year and they don't get anything for it, I want it to be the White House's fault, not ours. I would love to have them try to pass this through legislatively because they can't do it and they know it.
All right, Senator, turning to military issues, the Department of Homeland Security recently sparked outrage from veterans groups when a memo indicated they were targeting veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan as being possibly susceptible to white supremacy or militia extremist groups. Now, Homeland boss Janet Napolitano basically defends that memo. How dangerous is the DHS position as far as troop morale is concerned?
Oh, it's awful in morale. You know, I just got back from Afghanistan. I deal with these guys. I've been over there more than anybody else, any other member. I take my job seriously. Those guys, when they found out about that, it just is outrageous. Just because, and of course I'm from Oklahoma, so I know a little bit about Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols. Yes, those two guys were terrorists, and they were veterans. Does that mean that all the other 100,000 veterans here are terrorists? No, it doesn't. What Napolitano is trying to do is broad-base paint all veterans as people who are potential terrorists. It's an outrage, and you know, I don't know why the Obama administration is so obsessed with hurting veterans. You know, they came out just not too long ago with this idea that the veterans are not going to be entitled to if they're disabled, to the normal type of treatment. Instead, they'd have to go with private insurance. Then, because of the pressure on the White House, they backed off of that. Now they're going after veterans again. I don't know why they're doing it. All
right, you say you're concerned that Obama has gutted the military. What are the worst cuts as you see them?
Well, first of all, they vehemently denied it. It was kind of humorous, actually, because I was in Afghanistan when Gates made the announcement. Now, let me quickly say, don't blame Secretary Gates for this. This is a number that was given to him by the White House, and so he has to make these deep cuts. Now, they claim these aren't cuts. Well, they are cuts, because before we had used emergency supplementals and all that, and now Obama's talking about doing all that in Department of Defense appropriations. So, but they're wrong as they can be. If anyone has any doubts out there, let's look at a few of the programs that he's cutting. The F-22, that's the only fifth generation fighter that we have. We have a total of 187 of them. We're supposed to go up to 750. He's stopping the assembly line now. In other words, we're not going to be able to have any more fifth generation fighters. And yet Russia's cranking them out, the Su-30s, China's cranking them out. And so our kids would be going into battle with F-15s and F-16s, which are not fifth generation fighters. Now that is bad enough. He's also stopping the C-17s, are our primary lift capability, and we know how important they are. The Future Combat System. This was started by Shinseki about 6 or 7 years ago, and it's the first transformation of our ground forces, and we are 50% into this thing in modernizing our ground forces, giving our kids in battle something that is as good or better than their potential enemies. And they've stopped the FCS, the Future Combat System. They've stopped our missile defense system. Right now we've gone to Poland and to the Czech Republic. We've talked them into allowing us to have radar in the Czech Republic and having an interceptor in Poland to protect Western Europe from something that might come from Iran. And they're stopping that program. And so they're taking $1.4 billion out of the missile defense program here on the 26th anniversary of its inception that goes all the way back to Ronald Reagan. So these are things that just are necessary to defend America, and they're gutting the military. You know, what we should do, and what I have proposed for a long time, if you go back for 100 years, you'll find that the defending America has consumed 5.7% of the GDP. And that's really where it should be now, and yet we're down to 3%, and it was down below 3% during the Clinton administration. So I think what we ought to decide is defending America the #1 role of government. If it is, we need to give it the priority and do that first before all this huge welfare stuff that's going on.
Oklahoma Senator Jim Inhofe, always a pleasure speaking with you, sir.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you for watching Newsmax TV.